Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 2021 F1 and My Driver Career Mode. I hope you're all having a great day. Today, we go racing here for the Japanese Grand Prix. Very excited for this one, a track that I really enjoy, especially Sector 1 with how technical it is with the S's and whatnot. A very fun sector. Honestly, like one of the most fun sectors on the F1 schedule. So I was excited for this one here. Of course, we've been lacking with the R&D aspect lately here with this Haas F1 team. I'm not too concerned because we are down to the final 6 or 7 Grand Prix of the season, and we know we're not coming back to Haas next season anyways, but still want to get this team as competitive as we can, coming off of a great performance for us in the Singapore GP, just being in the right place, right time with safety cars and whatnot, with a big incident with Kimi Raikkonen and Sergio Perez there in the Red Bull and Alfa Romeo, and that was allowing us to get some points. So coming into the Japanese Grand Prix, though, the first thing I noticed was the weather for the race. It looks like it's going to be a mix of some dry and wet conditions. Sure enough, that's exactly what it's going to be. So we are going to get some legitimate rain in this session for the actual Grand Prix. We haven't had a rain race at all this season, other than a little bit of rain thrown into the end of the France GP, but we still haven't had a race that was just full on rain. This one obviously still not going to be full on rain, but there is still going to be some rain in the mix now as we come through into FP1 here. And like I said, just excited to get going for this one. Unfortunately, so I actually had to change a few engine parts, but I forgot to change them. So we're actually going to be a little bit down on power throughout this race. But if that rain does come in, hopefully earlier than later in the Grand Prix, that lack of power isn't really going to be much of an issue. So we come through doing the little track acclimatization here, getting used to the track, just really getting used to and adapting to the understeer, especially through my favorite part of the circuit right here, these S's. So I'm used to just being able to whip the car around here in past games, but you really had to be prepared for that understeer through those S's, and I felt like I did a pretty good job adapting to it. Now I made a mistake right here through the final chicane by going a little bit too deep there into the right-hander, but we made up for it and had a pretty good exit nonetheless now, and got a pretty good score there with the track acclimatization. We jump through now with the medium tire on the car to do the race strategy program, where we make this good of a 3-lap stretch as we can here, and you can see I was slipping the car around a little bit now. There's definitely some oversteer, and I was having for the first time an issue of overheating the rear tires. They got up over 100 degrees Celsius, and you don't want to go anything over 100 degrees Celsius on these tires, and unfortunately I did that on the rears, but I was able to cool them down. So that was another thing, is in the past games, you overheat the tires, you're in a lot of trouble. This time I overheat them, I was able to get them cooled down within a lap, and we were right back on track, really in good shape. So I was happy to see that now, as the overheating in general isn't too much of an issue with the tires in this game. But the race strategy went really well, and then we come through to the end of the session here, seeing where we stack up, especially against our teammate and rivals, of course, of Schumacher and the Williams drivers. Couldn't really compare though, because Schumacher, his fastest lap was actually on the hard tire, and ours was on that softer medium compound tire. So we're gonna jump through into FP2, and we're going to do our little simulation quick practice session here and see if we can get a bunch of R&D points headed our way at the end of this session, leading us into Q3, where we're going to try and lay down the fastest lap we can to see where we really stack up against the competition going into qualifying. So it was very quick actually for FP2, because we got a majority of the programs completed to the full extent in FP1. So we jump in through to FP3 now, and car felt really good, by the way, here in the third practice session, and of course it helps when you have the fastest soft compound on the car. But through here, it just felt great through the S's. Now this is the best it had felt all week, and hadn't made any changes to the setup, so I knew it was just straight up on the tire compound that was allowing us to just feel so good on this course now. As we came through that final chicane, got through there really good. Now, as some tracks you got to abuse those curbs, some tracks you don't want to abuse the curbs, and this track was a bit of a mix. Through the final chicane, you really want to abuse the curbs, but in the first part of the track, through that first sector, you don't even want to go near the curbs. So it was a bit of a mix here, as we did beat our teammate Schumacher just over a tenth of a second between himself and I on the same compound tire. So my confidence was definitely there coming into qualifying one, seeing we have the pace, but is it going to be enough when we come through into the Japanese Grand Prix qualifying session? We're about to find out now. What a beautiful circuit it is, by the way. You see the nice Ferris wheel there in the background. A track that, if I ever had the opportunity in real life to visit, absolutely would make that trip and hopefully get to see an F1 race there. I've never been to an F1 Grand Prix, by the way. Hopefully next year when the Canadian GP returns, I could go to that. That would be a nice little thing to do. I've never even been to a NASCAR race. As you guys know, a primarily NASCAR-based channel, but NASCAR being based in the United States, I don't even have a passport yet, so I would need to get one of those before I could even go see a NASCAR race. So jumping through though to the end of our first attempt at our qualifying lap, it was a rough lap. It was not good at all. I ran a terrible lap, so I was not happy with that. You can see that we were like 0.3 of a second behind Schumacher, so we put on the new set of softs, waited till as late as we could here in Q1 to go, and we got back underway for our lap, and through the S's, we were a good 2 to 2.5 tenths, almost 3 tenths faster than our previous lap. So I knew we were making some good time. We would get close to now half a second. Schumacher, by the way, was right behind me here, so he was trying to follow me through and set the fastest lap he could. Now as we head down this long straightaway into 130R, we were up over half a second faster through the final chicane. We got up to 6 tenths, but lost a little bit of ground, so it's going to be about 5.5 tenths to the good there. We crossed the line, beat Schumacher, but then Schumacher crosses the line and tops our lap, beats us. None of us advanced into Q2, obviously, but look at the time, about 100th of a second between myself and Mick Schumacher. Very close there in qualifying times as Russell and Latifi at the back of the grid as we get ready to go green here for the Japanese Grand Prix.
Welcome along then to the magnificent Suzuka International Circuit, a stone's throw away from Issa Bay in the beautiful Japanese countryside. What surprises lie in wait for us today in the Japanese Grand Prix? A lap of this historic racetrack covers 3.6 miles, and it's the only time during the season that we race on a figure-of-8 racetrack. The drivers can expect some intense G-forces through the 18 corners on offer here as they experience some of the highest average apex speeds on the Formula One calendar. And keep an eye out for overtakes going into the final chicane. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
But from the moment qualifying's over, you start to feel the adrenaline in your body build up and the buzz in your stomach as you anticipate the run down into turn one. It's all a bit like going into battle, and the unknown situation makes you nervous. Those pre-race nerves are a good thing. The day you don't have them means that you don't care anymore. And of course you have to make sure that all the procedures are second nature to you so that they're not taking up too much of your capacity.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Vettel, Ricciardo. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Lance Stroll and Raikkonen. Verstappen, Giovinazzi, Leclerc and Mick Schumacher. Sainz, they've taken a grid penalty. The rookie, Sergio Perez and Tsunoda. Russell, Latifi, Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso. Ocon, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Lando Norris starts from the back of the grid. Now, it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track.
There you saw the starting grid. Quite a bit of grid penalties handed out here today in the Japanese Grand Prix. One thing I noticed was the rain was supposed to come in the final 3 slots of the Grand Prix, and I decided to take a risk. I said, you know what, we haven't really taken control of strategy this season. We've let the team do it. I decided we're going to start on the hard compound tire. I hate driving on this compound, by the way, but I decided to do it. And hopefully the plan was to get to the rain and get to the crossover point and then be able to just do it without pitting before the rain comes, basically. Now, as I had a really awkward formation lap, for some reason the whole clutch option thing didn't show up there, so I was a little bit confused of what was going on. But nonetheless, everybody else is on a soft or medium compound. We're on the hard compound. This is our only chance to get points right here in this Japanese Grand Prix. So let's see if it works out. If we try to go longer than everybody, get get to the rain, to the crossover while everyone else does a pit stop. Will it work out? We're about to find out. 5 red lights. Lewis Hamilton leads away as this lights out, and we are underway immediately defensive there over his teammate Valtteri Bottas. And here comes Sebastian Vettel around the outside into turns 1 in the Aston Martin. A great qualifying effort for him. Grid penalties, of course, help as well and get him up into P3 now as he attacks Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes. That immediately allows his teammate of Lewis Hamilton to escape and get away as Bottas has to fight Vettel there, the 4-time world champion. Now, is it going to be enough from Bottas? No, it is not. Sebastian Vettel moves through into the second runner-up position. Daniel Ricciardo there just behind Bottas, his teammate of Lando Norris, quite a ways down the order due to some grid penalties as well. A lot of people took grid penalties in this Grand Prix, but what a start from Sebastian Vettel there as Lewis Hamilton already long gone. It was a terrible start for myself, by the way, and you're going to see here in just a moment now that I had dropped all the way down to about 17th place there in just the first sector or so of the course, but it was not over yet. I was under pressure from Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, and obviously I'm on the hard tire compound, everybody else is on the soft, so I was way off the pace. I let Fernando go. Here's a look at what happened on the start. So right here, I lose a lot of grip. We got off pretty well, and then I lose a lot of grip, nearly just plow into the side of the Perez car there in the Red Bull. Fortunately, that did not happen there. We kept it clean, but I was under attack through the whole first section here, through the S's and whatnot, and you can see I was struggling so hard here with grip. The car just didn't want to steer whatsoever. The understeer was massive, and I dropped down to P17 so fast there as Nicholas Latifi, a fellow Canadian, was able to get by as well now as we came through. Though on lap 2 now, Lando Norris, who took a grid penalty on the soft compound tire as well, was able to get by, and we were down now into 19th place as Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Is probably just a matter of time until he gets by as well, as we go for a bit of a weird slide right there. But like I said, this all made sense because I am on, you could say, 2 compounds harder than the competition now, so it was not looking good for myself whatsoever. But the strategy is we're not racing for track position here right now. We are racing strictly to make it further than these guys, to make it to the point where it rains and gets wet enough to where we didn't have to make a pit stop before anybody else. Now, as you can see though, Valtteri Bottas now on lap 4, after getting some help from the DRS, was able to get past Sebastian Vettel. Then a lap later on lap 5, here comes Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, trying to go around the outside of Sebastian Vettel like Vettel did to Bottas on the opening start of this race. And sure enough, Daniel Ricciardo up into P3, Vettel down to 4th place as Aston Martin are both 4th and 5th, with Stroll there, a fellow Canadian, in that 5th position. Back to myself now on lap 7 of this GP, and we were now running down Nicholas Latifi there in the Williams on the soft compound, but obviously not a lot of speed in that car. So I was getting within striking distance, but I couldn't quite get close enough to really do anything with them. And now you're going to see myself asking, what's the weather report? What's the rain looking like? And I was getting told by Jeff it's about 10 or so minutes out. So I'm just hoping, like I said, we can get far enough to where these guys, everybody in front of us, has to pit and we don't, and then they have to make a second pit stop. And sure enough, lap 9 coming to lap 10, pit stops get underway. Gasly, Leclerc, they're all coming into the pit lane there, as well as I believe it might have been George Russell as well coming into the pit lane now, as we have a bit of a power slide right there, a little bit abusive on the curbs. Thank goodness it didn't turn into an incident. But then now on the end of lap 10, here comes Nicholas Latifi. I wasn't trying to force a pass on him because I knew he was going to be pitting soon. Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, Kimi Räikkönen, they all come in, and now we're into the points in P10. So this strategy working so far. Our teammate Mick Schumacher, he was still out on the track at this point now. Sebastian Vettel had made his pit stop, and then a little bit later on lap 12, him and Max Verstappen in the Red Bull in a scrap, and here comes Lance Stroll out of the pit lane, just barely in front of both of those drivers, so they have to settle down for the time being. It's Stroll 6th, Verstappen 7th, 8th place Sebastian Vettel. Then here I come through again on lap 12, passing Perez, who's in the pit lane, asking again, what's the weather situation? It was getting close, the rain was coming, but now on lap 14, Stroll and Vettel scrapping it out right there into turns 1, but it's Sebastian taking over the position from Lance, so it's P5 for Vettel, P6 for Lance Stroll. But now on lap 13 for myself, here comes the rain finally, so we right now are in great position, and it'll be even better if our teammate of Mick Schumacher comes into the pit lane as well, because that will almost guarantee us to beat him. And there, sure enough, here comes Schumacher into the pit lane on the medium compound. He's going to probably put on the hard compound right here, and then Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo comes in as well, so we go up into P7. And it wasn't very long until you can see the track conditions getting damp as we came through now onto lap 17. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, the two Ferrari drivers were closing in on me quite significantly, but we were now on that crossover point, and it was just a matter of time until Jeff keys up and says, you know what, let's go over to a wet compound tire or to the intermediates, and that's exactly what would happen on lap 17. Jeff says, you know what, let's go on to the intermediates this lap. So we were coming into the pit lane, and this strategy worked perfectly for us and has put us in a position now where we could potentially get points, because everybody's going to be slower, and that just helps us now, of course, when we're in a slow car in general. But here comes Carlos Sainz into 130R. He takes the position now. I did not want to battle him into that corner, so I just let him have it. But still running in 8th place here in the points. Things are looking really good, and I would expect Sainz to come in right here, and that might force his teammate of Charles Leclerc to actually have to stay out on the track, and that's exactly what happens there, unfortunately for Charles. But we come into the pit lane here, get down to the pit speed, no problem whatsoever, and we're going to come in and put on the intermediate tire. So a few drivers having to stay out due to their teammates coming in is going to allow us to potentially gain maybe a spot or two as well here. So a weird camera angle for the pit stop here today, but nonetheless, we beat Carlos Sainz out of the pit lane because he was stuck waiting for other drivers to come into their pit stalls and whatnot. So my teammate Mick Schumacher, by the way, he was just coming in right now, so a bit of a double stack there, but it worked out because we were far enough ahead of him due to him having to make that extra pit stop compared to us, and we come out in P9, so everything was looking great. And then as we came through now onto lap 19 of this GP, it was now down to Charles Leclerc. Where was he going to come out? We get past Alonso and the Alpine, who had just come in for the intermediate, and there's Leclerc right there, and we will come out in front of him. But unbelievably, Leclerc staying out on a wet track on the dry tire gets him in front of Carlos Sainz. That just goes to show how much Sainz was held up there on that pit stop. Now is Pierre Gasly, though, in the AlphaTauri, he's pulling over to the side of the track. He's going to be day done for him, as now he had some type of mechanical failure, and then Leclerc was putting some pressure on myself as that was happening. I would let him go by on the right side. It was absolutely pointless to even try and put up a fight to the Ferrari driver, but that quite wasn't it yet, because as we came through to lap 20, here comes Lando Norris now as we head down to 130R. He's putting on some pressure right there in the McLaren. A great drive by him, by the way. He started behind us, and now here he is passing us again like he did on the opening couple laps of the Grand Prix. He moves up now into the 8th position. We accidentally fight back here, switch back on him. I didn't mean to get alongside him like that because I know he has so much more speed in the car, but now we get behind his gearbox. ERS on to overtake there, trying to protect at least over Perez, who puts some pressure to the back of me. He's going to look to the right hand side as we go down into turns one, side by side with the Red Bull veteran of Sergio Perez right there now as we hold him off those sideways there, but we, thank goodness, hang on to the car, so we were okay for the time being. Now a quick update of what was going on around us. Lewis Hamilton driving away with the Grand Prix victory. It's crucial for Valtteri Bottas at this point in the season if he wants to keep the title fight alive to beat Lewis Hamilton, but clearly it is not going to happen today as nobody has anything for Lewis Hamilton. Ricardo, Verstappen, Vettel, your top 5. Vettel's teammate of Stroll there in P6. Leclerc, Norris, myself, and Perez currently rounding out the top 10. Leclerc setting a very strong pace here now, as you see Norris as well driving away from myself, but I was comfortably staying in front of Perez. If he was able to get to my gearbox and maybe make a move up the right or left hand side, I wasn't going to battle him at this point. I was just going to let him have it, but he wasn't finding that opportunity to make it happen. I was able to keep him staying put behind us at a comfortable gap. There you see Schumacher down in 17th place, and then the Williams duo of Russell and Latifi at the very back. They're the last two cars running at this point. So lap 23, still out in front of Perez. He and Yuki Tsunoda trying to put some pressure on myself here as we go down into the hairpin. Just a handful of laps to go at this point. Looking at points for 2 times in a row now. There's a caution. It's Lewis Hamilton who's pulling off the track, leading the Japanese Grand Prix. He is done for the day. A mechanical failure for the 7-time champion, and now this will blow the championship battle wide open. We thought Hamilton was running away with it. Bottas, his teammate, goes through to take the lead and is in position to win the Japanese Grand Prix. Ricardo will go through to 2nd. It's going to be Verstappen in 3rd. As you can see, we would come through the next time by to go by, and now up into 8th place after passing a Lewis Hamilton who has DNF'd from the Japanese Grand Prix. Unbelievable moments here in the closing laps of this Grand Prix now, as we are in great position to get points for the second time, like I said, in a row in Singapore. It was about being in the right place at the right time. This time we have gotten ourselves into this positions by just strategy, and I definitely didn't expect this to work out for us, but here we are with a lap and a half to go in this Grand Prix, and we were continuing to defend well enough over Perez. He never even got an opportunity at this point to even make a move on us. We were actually just holding him back well enough. We come through to start the final lap of the Japanese Grand Prix. Tsunoda down there in P10 in the AlphaTauri. What a day this is about to be, not only for myself in the future of my Formula One career, as we're about to get points for the third time this season. Wow, what a moment that was right there. We make a nice little save as we come through the S's, but Valtteri Bottas is about to win the Japanese Grand Prix, as it looked like it was a runaway win for Lewis Hamilton. He DNFs in the closing laps due to a mechanical failure, and the championship battle is right back together between those two drivers here. If Bottas can just hang on through the final few moments of this lap now, as I continue to defend well here over Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. What a Grand Prix it has been now, as Valtteri Bottas showing up through the final chicane, down through this sweeping right turn, is going to win the Japanese Grand Prix, capitalizing on his teammates' DNF. Here's Daniel Ricciardo in McLaren. Second place, Max Verstappen will finish off the podium there in third place. You can see the rain just coming down at this point. The cameras can barely pick up the cars. Vettel is going to get fourth over his teammate of Lance Stroll in fifth. Leclerc P6 for Ferrari. Seventh place is going to go to Lando Norris in the McLaren, Ricciardo's teammate, and then you got myself here defending well enough over Perez and Tsunoda as we head down this long straightaway towards 130R for the final time. As long as we don't make a big mistake through here, which we don't, we should be perfectly fine now into the final chicane. No desperate lunge from Perez to cover off now as we come through that final corner, and now through the sweeping right-hander we are going to come through to get points for the second Grand Prix in a row. First Singapore, and now in the Japanese Grand Prix here, a strong 8th place finish now. Third time on the season we have picked up points now. The first time was at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. What a Grand Prix it was, as Lando Norris gets driver of the day now, as you have some post-race celebrations for Valtteri Bottas, Daniel Ricciardo, and Max Verstappen.
A brilliant win on this beloved figure-of-8 circuit. And talk to me, what do you think it was that sealed the win for them?
Well, they clearly have a car that comes alive in the kind of conditions we were dealing with today. It's a very balanced package in the wet, and what that means is that the drivers have confidence to attack, and having that confidence gets you on the power earlier, it lets you brake later, and can put you a long way up the road.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today.
Conditions on the track suddenly dry, by the way, and sunny again, so that rain must have moved out real quick after the podium celebrations there. But Bottas picking up the victory, and what got us the points today was, like I said, the right strategy. Everybody pitted before the rain except for us for starting on the hard compound, and the only pit stop we ever had to make was to put on the intermediate tire. Schumacher, P16, he was running better than us. He could have had a chance at points too if maybe he would have played the strategy right, so that was kind of unfortunate for him. That's like the second Grand Prix in a row he's kind of given up an opportunity to score points. But unbelievable race for us here now, as we have 16 points compared to Schumacher's 0. And there you see, of course, in the constructors, we're not going to have anything for Alpine here in the final closing races. It's really just going to be between us and Alfa Romeo for 8th and 9th, and the constructors, I think, at this point. So we look ahead though, we got to of course try and get some more R&D upgrades coming our way here for the closing races, as we did have an interview with Claire after the Grand Prix. So we're going to get to choose a new rival. Definitely not going to aim for Sebastian Vettel or Lance Stroll, and I decided actually we're going to choose Fernando Alonso as our new rival here, as it's safe to say you're smashing everyone's expectations, isn't it? I mean, it helps when you hit the strategy right for once, of course, and definitely felt more comfortable in the wet weather than I thought I was going to, especially beginning the season. We really struggled with the wet weather compared to the AI, but we definitely held our own today here in Japan under the intermediate conditions. Now, of course, Para's just never even got an opportunity to pass this, which was hard to believe now, as we do have some more R&D upgrades on the way. I'm not trying to rush too many, but definitely want to get some here as quick as possible. As always, if you guys enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. I would like to thank you all for taking the time of your day to watch this episode. You saw the points there between Lewis Hamilton as well as Valtteri Bottas. Just 14 points between the two Mercedes drivers after a big moment at DNF for Lewis Hamilton. Just 5 races left. In the next episode, we got the USA GP. Excited for that one there. A fun track to drive through the S's again. I'm not a huge fan of the rest of that track, but definitely excited for Sector 1 again now. As I would like to thank the Going Racing members before we end it of MJ, Joseph 9001, Timothy Arline, Bubba Jr., Brett Durward, Dark Gengar Gaming, AJ Vasura, Russell Dixon, Kenneth Barnett, Dana9302, Speed Demon 341, as well as Illinois Diecast. I appreciate you guys' support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.